ones are not always the best that you can get. It's better to make your own. But let's talk about pollination first. Where's my arrow? Here we go. Pollination. So why pollinators are so important. So the thing is, everything in life is connected. The plants need minerals. The plants then feed the animals. The animals, as we pass on, we break down into minerals. So we're all connected, and the plants need help from the animals to pollinate so that they can produce seeds and fruit. Now, about a third of our food is actually pollinated by bees, whether it be the honeybee, which is really efficient at it, or other types of pollinators. But the fact is, about 70% of all plants need help from pollination from animals of some sort. Some are wind pollinated, but most of them do need help from pollinators. So without the help of pollination, basically we would lose about a third of our food. The other thing, if you drink milk or if you eat beef, cows can't eat more just grass. They need other things, and clover and lucerne are two key foods that cows eat, and that is 100% reliable on bees to pollinate the food that they eat. So without that kind of pollination, even the milk that we drink and the cows that we have, they would struggle to survive. So as we can see, our pollinators, especially bees, are what we call a keystone species in the web of life. And if we were to lose that, the whole web would literally fall apart. So I just want to give you an example, because as our population grows, obviously the demand for pollination is becoming higher and higher. So these are current figures, data that I've collected in the last 12 months. So what I'm looking at here is the almond fields. Now, almonds are becoming very popular for almond milk, that sort of thing. So the almond industry alone is a growing industry. And currently in Australia, we have over 25,000 registered beekeepers. There's a few that don't play by the rules, but as we know of, over 25,000 registered beekeepers, and collectively they have over 670,000 hives. Now, when almond pollination takes place, it's in August, so it's in winter for the bees. But they've had to be kept strong so that they can go and pollinate the almonds. And the thing with the almonds is, one species of almond tree, the pollen from that tree needs to go to a different species of almond tree. So it's called cross-pollination. So this year, there were 227,000 hives needed for almond pollination alone, and each hive would have had about 50,000 bees in it. And this is a growing industry, and they're estimating by the year 2023, we will be needing 316,000 hives. And, you know, a lot of beekeepers are just hobby beekeepers, so there's a lot of pressure on the commercial beekeepers to provide us with food as part of our food chain. And that's just almonds alone. Then you've got your berries and your pumpkins and zucchinis and your legumes and like all sorts of stuff. So this is just almonds alone. It's the biggest pollination event that takes place in Australia. So pollination is really important, and we need those pollinators to help us to do that. So I want to talk about pollination. You've got a flower which has very specific parts. And the first thing is the petals. So the petals are usually of a beautiful colour. So they are an attractant for the animal that comes to feed from it. And, you know, within all of life, there should be a giving and a receiving. So the flower gives something and receives something in return, and then the pollinator gives something and receives something in return. So the petals are the attractant, and they have a beautiful smell usually. And what they are is that they are like a cup, and the cup actually holds the nectar, which is a sweet liquid that has several sugars in it. Mainly glucose and fructose are the two main sugars. And that is an energy drink for the pollinators. So as the pollinators come to the flower, they receive the nectar. But the bees, especially when they travel down into the flower to get to the nectar, they pass the pistil, which contains the pollen. And so as the pistil rubs up against them, the pollen sticks to their bodies. And then as they bury deep down inside the flower, they'll also then come in contact with the stamen, which is usually a bit sticky. And it's the stamen that needs to receive the pollen. So as the pollen travels down the tube within the stamen, it reaches the ovule area where the seeds can start to grow. And that will be surrounded by a fruit. So if you take gum nuts, for example, the gum nut itself is the fruit, and it has tiny little seeds inside. Almonds, for example, the almond itself that we eat, that is the seed that we eat. In the avocado, very obvious, it's got a big seed, but we eat the fleshy fruit that's around the outside. So that's how the pollination and the fruit and seed cycle works. And then those seeds that's part of their reproductive cycle to keep the plants growing into the future. So pollination can be complicated because sometimes you have imperfect flowers, meaning that you have a male flower, which has the pistil, and a female flower that has a stamen, or there are some species that need pollination from one plant to another. So somehow the pollen needs to get from one flower to the other flower so that pollination process can take place. So obviously pollinators help us with that. So let's quickly go through the types of pollinators that help us. We have moths and butterflies. So they go and drink the nectar. And the pollen for them is a protein. So the pollen helps them to build body mass, muscles and wings and antenna and body parts. And the nectar is their carbohydrate, it's their energy. Hoverflies and other flies, believe it or not, are pollinators. And the hoverfly is an Australian native. And the hoverfly actually migrates to Tasmania as part of its migratory breeding cycle. So they actually fly quite a long way. We also have bats, whether it be fruit bats or micro bats. Bats do also help with pollination process. Then you've got many birds, honey eaters with their long beaks. So each different flower, as you can see, is going to suit different animals, and they create different relationships with the flower and whatever animal generally pollinates them. And finally, of course, what we're focusing on today is the Australian native bee. And there are many, many, many Australian native bees, and they have a scientific name and a common name. The blue-banded bee, for example, not all blue-banded bees actually have blue bands, believe it or not. And not all leaf-cutter bees actually cut leaves, but they're still of the same family. So there are scientific names that you can learn about if that's something that interests you. And the Homolictus bee, these three bees here, they are quite common to Victoria. And there are things that we can do to help these bees thrive, because at this point, there's a lot of competition for our native bees. They are losing their habitat. The more houses that we build and the more farming that gets cleared and our native plants disappear, then our native bee population really is under a lot of threat, as opposed to the European honeybee, which is an introduced species. that is thriving in Australia. So I actually feel like more concentration on our Australian native bees would be a really good idea. So there's so much information out there. I'm not going to go through it all, but here are some websites. aussiebee.com.au. That gives you the common names of bees, and it has a chart to show you which bees you will find in which different state. Because around Australia, we actually have 1,700 different species of native bees here in Australia, which is a lot of different bees. And within those species, there are obviously subgroups again. So it's a very fascinating area, and they all do different things and live in different habitats. It so happens that on the 8th to the 15th of November is Australian Pollinator Week. So there's a website, australianpollinatorweek.org.au, and there's also a Facebook page, and there are actually quite a few different events. So if you want to learn more about Australian pollinators, then follow both of those, or go to both of those sites, and you can get in touch with some fantastic events, some of which are free. And one of the events which is pertinent for our Western Plains here in Victoria is the Powerful Pollinators West Gippsland and Western Port Victoria. And that's an online event. It's free, and that's on Wednesday, the 11th of November at 7 to 8 p.m. Another website or another foundation is the Ween Bee Foundation. They have a really good page on their website about native pollinators, so that's worth looking up as well. And another lady that I've just discovered is Kit Prendergast from Western Australia, known as the Bee Babette, and she has a Facebook page called Bees in the Burbs. Now, if you want to learn the scientific names, Kit is the lady to talk to. She's doing her PhD and is a very well-knowledge scientific person about native bees, and has produced several papers around all of that in her research. She's doing a talk, but this is in Western Australia, so you can't go to it, but I'm just giving you an example of the different things that you can learn about. And she's doing a talk about the burrowing bee. So there are actually some bees that live in the ground, believe it or not. And she's created this fantastic book called Creating a Haven for Native Bees. Now, you can buy it in a hard copy, or you can download it. It's only $14. So there's so much information. Oh, and in her book, there's a whole section on the type of plants that bees like, and that would give them food. So now this information, what I'll do is I'll provide a PDF copy to Iramu. So if you would like this information, either take a screenshot now if you want to, or I will provide a PDF to Iramu, and I'm sure they won't mind emailing that around to anyone that wants to get it from them. Okay, so how can we help our pollinators? So we know now that 75% of all flowering plants need help from pollinators, and a third of our food is about 100% reliable on pollinators. So, you know, not just the honeybee, we need to help all of our pollinators. Things that we can do is obviously provide water, provide shelter, plant bee-friendly plants with pollen and nectar. Stop using insecticides if you can, please. They really do not give any service to our insect pollinate population. And the fact is that there are actually good insects out there, and it's those good insects that help balance the insects that are not so good. For example, the ladybug loves to eat aphids. that's what it wants to live on. So you can put plants in that encourage the ladybugs, and then your aphid problem will also be looked after. So there's a symbiotic relationship that can be created if you keep things in balance, which means there's not a need for pesticides. There's a lot of weeds that bees love. So, you know, don't feel like you have to get rid of your weeds. And on the honeybee note, if you do see a swarm, stay calm. There is a website called swarmpatrol.com where you can log it, and your local beekeepers in the area will be notified. If you know of a local beekeeper, then buy real honey, and becoming a beekeeper can be a very rewarding hobby as well, but that's for honeybees. But let's keep going with the native pollinators. So basically, food, water, and shelter are the main things that our insect population needs to thrive and keep healthy. So if you are interested in the book, Creating a Haven for Native Bees, you can just email Kit at her Gmail account. So you can take a screenshot of that, or as I said, I'll be providing this information. As I said, she's got lots of information there about native plants, but bottlebrush, gum trees, banksia, snake bush, everlasting daisies, native peas. There's a lot of plants out there that our native bees will really appreciate if you can put some of those into your garden. Water. Now here's some examples of some bee-friendly water. Whether it be honeybees or any kind of insects, they need a safe place to land so that when they go to drink, they don't drown. So little rocks and pebbles, or duckweed, or sticks, or anything that's going to create different levels in the water, even bricks, just anything that they can land on is going to assist them to drink safely. And you want the water to be in a shady spot so that it doesn't get too hot. It also means that you don't need to fill it up too often as well. Shelter. So believe it or not, the honeybee lives in a colony, and there's, I think, 2 other native species that are more up in Queensland and northern New South Wales that live in a colony. But most of the other bees actually live by themselves. So here you see a bunch of blue-banded bees, and they're the boys, and the boys can congregate together sometimes to sleep at night time. So having reeds around is also an important thing to help with the native pollinators. Also, dirt. Have plain dirt. Don't cover everything in mulch, because as you saw before, the Dawson burrowing bee actually digs holes in the dirt and lives in the dirt. Having lumps of wood hanging around will create, and rocks as well, all of those things create a safe haven for all sorts of insects, which, you know, as I said, if we can get them in balance, then it actually helps to keep nature balanced. So thank you for listening. I just want to show you a little bit more about the book, and let's get building. But what I want to talk to you briefly here is this insect hotel. You don't want, this one's been modified. So there are some areas that are just not good for insects. What they really want are small tubes. So they want small tubes to hide in a sheltered area. There's a cup and it's just hanging on a branch. So they want sun, they want shelter from the rain and the wind, and they want long tubes to shelter in. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And this is the book. And as I said, in there, let me just find it. Yep, so look, there's ground nesting bees. She uses the scientific names of things, but in further here, there is a whole page of plants, and then favorite bee flora. So there's a whole section in there. Tea tree is another one. Melaleuca, myrtles, banksias, our grevilleas is another one. Daisies, obviously. So the list goes on and on. Obviously, leaves are also important because the leaf cutter needs them. The leaf cutter actually creates little cocoons for the bees. Oh, and if you look really closely here, where am I? See how those leaves there? They've had little circles cut out of them. All right, so that's come from a leaf cutter bee. So Kit doesn't know I'm promoting this, but I'm sure she won't mind. I think this is a fabulous book. I bought mine in a hard copy, but you can get one just as a download as a PDF as well. So let's build a native beehive. Now, obviously, let me have a drink of water. Obviously, keeping bees healthy is important. I'm just going to shift things around here a bit. Right. Keeping bees healthy is important. So there are some things that I prefer when it comes to insect hotels. Some people will just get a log of wood and then they drill holes in it. Very, very simple. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it means if you get pests and diseases in the wood, then it's harder to interchange those pieces. And I was trying before with the drill, and this is quite a hard piece of gum. And it would take ages, okay, to do that. But that is one way, and you can just put lots and lots of holes in the wood. I've also discovered that smaller holes are better than bigger holes. So this was an insect hotel that we made. I made that as part of a project at Bunnings. And I've now since learned that these bigger holes up here, they're actually not really suitable for the blue banded. The spiders would probably love them. The structure itself is fine. So you can build a structure like this yourself. But the tubes inside are too big for the bees. So you're better off with smaller ones. And they can be made out of cardboard. You can also buy, these were bamboo straws that I bought from Kmart, which I just cut in half. And they actually come with, if I can find it, it comes with a little pipe cleaner. So what you could do is you could actually clean them out if you had a bee hotel made out of this material. And obviously the other thing is your good old paper straws. They work quite well as well. So, and cardboard rolls, because the great thing is in this one, they're interchangeable. So you can take the pieces in and out. So every year or two, you can go through and clean it out and go, okay, that's looking a bit manky. I'm going to put some fresh material in there. Because you will find that bees will if you get the right spot that's sheltered and away from traffic and gets morning sun, the bees will come back to the same spot. So, and you could have several of these all put together in a bigger structure if you wanted to, okay? But you want to make it weatherproof. So it can be made out of several different materials. If you do have bamboo, again, I would use the smaller ones than the bigger ones. It's a bit tricky to cut. You have to cut it with a saw. It will not cut very well. with scissors because it splits. Other materials you want are little twigs and sticks, because once you've got your material in there, you don't want it to fall out. You want them to be jammed in there nice and tight, okay? All right, so I've got my hammer, I've got my nail, I've got my scissors, and I've got my string. I prefer a natural string. That's a synthetic one. I prefer natural because it's compostable. So, and then I've got some glue, and I've got some paper. All right, and I think we're ready to go. Oh, and a pencil. So, let's make a insect hotel. First of all, if you want to make one in a cup, you want a cup that is straight up and down. You don't want a cup that's tapered at the end, because again, it'll be harder for, it means it'll be compacted where the point is. So I find a container, whether it be this or a can, or you can use the bottom part of a drink bottle. All of these materials will keep the rain off of them and keep the tubes dry on the inside. And this you could cover with, you know, paint it on the outside so it's dark. So it's dark on the inside rather than it being see-through. So that would probably help the bees as well. So this is really simple. Just basically cut it in half and use the bottom half. You want to find a way to attach it. Now, you could leave a lip and cut a lip there so that you could nail it somewhere. But what I like to do is put a string. So I'm just going to bend this down a little bit so you can see the table in front of me. All right, so I've got my, there we go. I've got my, my container. I'm just going to go with the scissors here and poke a hole in there. There we go. Hole poked. Then I need my string. You want to go through the end first, through where you've put the hole. Then you can get your hand in to grab that. This is such a simple insect hotel, but if you can get it right, it's very effective. All right, you tie a knot, and now you've got a hanging, okay? And so now that is simply a matter of getting your tubes and filling it up with tubes until it's tight, okay? One simple way. Another way is with a tin can. You've made the pasta sauce. You've got the you've got the tomato tin left over. So again, very simple. Just with a nail, you want it in one edge of it. It's going to be loud. You just want to hammer the nail through. As simple as that. And again, you thread the string through the hole first. You grab it inside. And then you proceed to fill it up with the material, whether it be the paper straws, the bamboo straws. And once you get to the point where it's really full, That's then when you get the little sticks and you can jam the little twigs in, and that will make it go tighter and tighter and tighter until eventually, when you tip it up, nothing falls out anymore, okay? And so that can become another hotel. If you don't have bamboo, do not despair. We have the technology, okay? Good old paper. Now remember, you don't want any treated wood. You want to use natural materials, okay? Because you don't know how those treated chemicals could affect the health of the bees. So the easiest thing to do is grab a piece of paper or several. I think I used about 12 pieces of paper in the tin here. Fold it in half. And fold it in half again, so you've got a quarter. Then we're just going to cut that. So obviously you would do, you know, a few at a time. As I said, I think I used about 12 bits of paper. So I'm just cutting those bits of paper there. Then good old glue. This is fairly non-toxic and it'll dry. What I do is I put a strip of glue along one end, and then at the other end with a plain old pencil, and you want to just roll back and forth a few times so that it tucks under, and roll, 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 nice and tight around the pencil. Just hold it at the end a bit so that glue sticks. And there you've created a paper tube. Okay? Because the bees need the tubes to burrow in, because they'll actually put 3 or 4 different larvae in there. Okay? That's where they lay their eggs. So they'll lay an egg, seal it off, lay an egg, seal it off, lay an egg, seal it off, and then they'll cap it on the end. Okay? So that's why they want the long tubes. They don't want a short tube. So especially with the bamboo, I had a sample. Hold on just a sec. Here we go. So this one, you can see the hole in that is not very deep, okay? So you want to make sure that if you're using bamboo, you use this section in here that has the long cavity in it, all right? So once you've got all your tubes, now when you're rolling, you also want to be careful. Try not to get these spiral, all right? You want to keep it nice and straight from end to end, all right? You want to keep it nice and straight and not have it angled up on a spiral, all right? So you just do those tubes. I'll just make another one. And as I said before, keeping them out of the weather from the rain is very important, because, you know, when things get damp, things get moldy. So as you can see, a few of those, they're actually behind the lip of the tin, but some of these, they're actually sticking out past the tin, all right? If you can see, they're sticking out through the top of the tin. So what I can do, this is why the paper is really good to work with. I can just go in there and trim to length any that are sticking out so that they're all hidden, so that when it rains, none of them are going to get wet. Just trim that one a little bit. There we go. And let's put a few bits more of material in here. to make that tighter. What else have we got here? Oh, that one's too long. I'm just stuffing things in there to the point of still falling out. So let's throw a few more bits and pieces in here till it gets to the point where nothing will fall out. A few more tubes probably wouldn't have gone astray. I'm just trying to demonstrate here now for you. There we go. Okay. All right, so that's nice and tight in there. Nothing's going to fall out. Now, when you hang this, you also want to hang it, if possible, with the front tilting down slightly, because if it's tilting upwards and rain does get in, you're going to get a pool of water down in the bottom of the vessel there, which is going to rot out whatever tube. So if you've got it tilting forward slightly, then any rain is going to immediately come out, okay? So it's in a watertight container, in the right position. These tubes, as I said, they're now interchangeable. You can pull them out and put new ones in the next season. And whether you use straws or make your own or use bamboo, all of that natural material is quite valid. All right, let's make one in a cup now. It's so easy, right? Now these ones are going to be a bit tall. So in a cup, I'm going to need to cut those shorter. And the beautiful thing about the cup is it comes in with the built-in handle already, right? So you could make several of these if you've got a few spots around the garden. You can hang them. Now you want them off the ground, not too high, but in a sheltered spot. So something that gets morning sun, but afternoon shade, and that doesn't get too windy. So you don't want these moving around. You want something that's stable and that keeps nice and still. There we go. Look, that one's easy. Now, obviously, these are all sticking out over the end. So to finish that off, I would want to cut them off. But if I had, let's say my hand is a tree, I can just hang that over a branch. Now, look, this one is actually hanging backwards. I don't know if you see, it naturally wants to hang down. So I would need to put something so that in there so that it didn't spin around and hang the wrong way. I would want to have it tilted forward slightly. Okay, so I really like these tube ones. If you can get cardboard tubes, ones these small are hard to come by. But look, making paper ones is really easy. And as I said, you've got the different paper straws that you can use as well. So there you go. That is bee hotels. Pretty easy and simple. Before I go though, I just wanted to mention, and again, obviously for native bees, native plants would be best. So there is, I'm pretty sure I got this at Bunnings, but this is an Australian native wildflower mix. Okay, it's an Australian native wildflower mix by, it's a Mr. Fothergill's brand. I'm pretty sure I got this at Bunnings. But other things that pollinators like, this is a beneficial, everything's backwards, beneficial insect and bee mix. And up in the corner, it has the bee there. Okay, so at any of the nurseries that you go to, any of the seeds that attract insects will have some sort of symbol, whether it's a bee or a butterfly. Here's a few more here. Bergamot, which again has the butterfly. Lavender's a classic. Okay. Borage is another one. Obviously, the honeybees will enjoy those as well. But your native flowers, there's plenty out there. So let's explore our native bees and our native plants. This is our native country. So, you know, as I said, the more we build houses, the more our native habitat is disappearing. So if we can put that back into our gardens, I think that's a fantastic thing that we can do to help our little native pollinators. That some of them are tiny, they're minute, they're the size of ants. So let's do what we can to help them, okay? I hope you've enjoyed today. Pretty simple. Or, you know, if you like your woodwork, you can get more complicated and build something really nice. There's so many alternatives. Excuse me. And as I said, if you're interested in the book, a wealth of information. It's my new favourite book at the moment, and I can't get enough of it. Excuse me, I'm just choking here. So thank you for listening today. I think I might open it up if anyone has any questions at all.
Carmel, when's the best time to clean the bee house?
Yes, it's in here. I'm pretty sure just before spring is the best time to do that, because it's in springtime that they will start laying more. They will be putting their eggs in, and then they emerge. So I'm pretty sure that's what she said, is just before springtime, so in winter. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Good hygiene. Best time to clean it out is at the end of winter, just prior to when the bees will start to become active and commence nesting in springtime. So yes. Yep. Any other questions?
Carmel, with the house shape one, would it need a back on it?
Possibly a good, I guess it would depend on where you hung it. So yes, probably a good idea, because it would stop the wind coming through. But if it was against a fence or against a wall of a house or something like that, then it would have the backing from that provided. But yeah, very good point. I think putting a back on it would create that it'll be darker inside there as well. So yes, very good point. Absolutely. Yep. Anyone else? No?
I think you've given such a great presentation that everyone's just got lots of information now, and they're getting ready to go out and make their own little bee hotels. So, and like you say, they're so easy, you know, like...
Very easy.
Yeah.
Very easy, yeah.
I know some of the places have moved over to the paper straws, and I don't like using them because 2 sips and they've gone soggy. So I've got another place to use them in now. So
there you
my
go.
bee hotel will have lots of paper straws.
Yep.
Thank you so much for today. Thank you for all the information. And as I said at the start, this will be up on our YouTube page. So hopefully we'll have a whole lot of bee hotels getting built over in the next couple of weeks. And I'll make sure it's posted up for Pollinator Week. I actually saw a Facebook post mentioning that, and I thought, oh, good, we got in close to that. So, yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, so...
I have to include this in my talk.
Yes, no, definitely. So is that a yearly thing?
Sorry?
Is that yearly? Is it always the same week in November, Pollinators Week, or...?
Could be. Not sure.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. No, that's fine. I can keep an eye out anyway. But no, thank you very much for today. Lots to take away from. And yeah, hopefully we have lots of bee hotels for our native bees.
Yes, go out and get building.
No worries. Thank you everyone for joining us.
It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure, everyone.
No
All right.
worries. Thanks, Carmel.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye.